right, everybody. Welcome to another Friday Night Live. Don't know about y'all. I'm ready for a break from summer. And it looks like our temperatures are going to start getting a little more reasonable because today's heat index was 104. And I didn't get a lot done for that reason. I did early. Not much happened after about 2 o'clock. Hey, Pippin Eyes, thank you for coming in. Buddy, I'm working with a new mic, so let me know how I sound. I'm trying to make sure sound quality is getting a little bit better. And I've got a little fan running in the background so I don't die in here. So let's see. News and housekeeping. We've got our foraging class coming up tomorrow here on the farm in West Knox County, 11 a.m. till about 2 o'clock. Pippin says I sound good. Thank you, sir. And we're going to do, about a 2-hour walk around here, answer some questions, have some refreshments, chat a little bit. So if you're hearing this before August 31st and you'd like to come out, holler at me at strongrootsresources@gmail.com and I'll get you some directions. Looks like we got, at last count, about 7 people coming out, so that'll be nice. And there's plenty to show, even though we are pretty dry. Most of the trees and quite a bit of the shrubs around here are doing pretty good. So plenty of things to show and talk about that are in their foraging state. So I sent in, if you guys haven't heard it yet, I sent in my expert council segment to Jack on the Survival Podcast, and I went all in on persimmons because they're everywhere around here. I have lots and lots and lots of baby ones, and I've got a couple of mature trees that I sort of discovered on accident, really, because they were back up against an old fence line where I don't visit too often. But persimmon trees are cool, and a lot of them are already fruiting and dropping their fruit, so keep an eye out for those. And yeah, if you guys tune into that segment, I kind of went into some other uses beyond just the fruit. And another cool forageable, is that a word? Tree that's setting its fruit right now is the Kusa dogwood. So this is a Japanese variety of dogwood, and it sets this fruit that is, I'm gonna say it's about the size of an acorn, and it's really good. So it's anywhere from kind of like a deep pink to a deep red, and it's got a very custard-like texture. Doesn't really have any seeds in it, at least not on the one I was eating the other day. And the outside, the casing, I guess you would call it, you can eat it, but it's not, that part's not as palatable. So I was kind of just like, kind of like spitting out the seed and getting rid of that covering and just enjoying the insides. So that's actually one of those. I think the Kusa dogwood gets a little bit overlooked sometimes. This was actually on one of my customers' properties. I don't have one. I want one now. They're expensive trees when you buy them. When you buy them big, they're very expensive. But this is a good customer, and I will probably reach out to her and I will see what's involved in cloning one of those trees. Just to have one out here on the property, or keep an eye out for deals as well. So yeah, look up Kusa. That's Kousa dogwood. They are okay in full sun, but like other dogwoods, they actually like to be in a little bit of shade. So they could certainly fulfill the edge of a food forest, or just plant them on your property and you've just got food hanging out right there that a lot of people don't know about. I texted my customer because she was out of town when I was working out there, and I said, "Did you know the fruit on this tree is edible? Because they are loaded right now." And she said she had heard that, but she wasn't really sure. So I said, "Well, I just ate about 3, and I'm fine." And actually, I was telling her this later on in the day after it had been several hours since I had eaten them, and I said it's good to go. But I knew about that. So let me take a second here and say howdy to everybody. One Step Closer has popped in. Good to see you. Howdy, Pippin. Hippocrates Garden, Arkansas is representing. And I think we've got a new person here with possibly the best name ever, Butt Nuggets Homestead. Also from Arkansas. All right, y'all. Thank you for coming in. So, yeah, the foraging is good. And we are potentially going to get a storm here anytime. I don't know. I've got serious sunshine at the moment, so who knows? We've got all these little pop-ups kind of coming up around us. But I would love to have some rain. We haven't had any real rain pretty much most of the month. I haven't really had much rain in August. The gardens are doing okay because of the way I got them set up and all the deep mulch and everything. But it's just, it's gotten dusty out here, and the grass and all is looking sad, and the pastures are okay. I mean, it's certainly better than they were last year. This time last year we were completely crispy because we didn't have any rain in July either. So the forage for the sheep is okay, but man, some rain would be nice. And we've got an Australian. Thank you so much, Peter, for coming in. Half bubble off of plum. I like that a lot. I like that. I know that. I get that reference. I do. Nice. So thank you all for hanging out. So actually the bulk of what I wanted to talk about today was to answer a question in more depth as I knock my things over from a lady who wrote me, who emailed me after last week's show where I went on a tangent about getting a hold of cardboard. And, basically she asked, well, what comes after you get the cardboard? And I realized that there's a whole system that happens when I obtain cardboard, when I use it in the landscape. So I was going to talk about what that looks like, because there's as common as this is to a lot of us to, yeah, you're in good company, Butt Nuggets Homestead. We understand that butt nuggets are eggs around here. In other circles, who knows? But you're good and clear over here. Okay, so the whole cardboard thing. She said, what comes after the cardboard? So here's what I do. The reason for the cardboard, and I can tell you can skip it if you don't want to do it. If you can't get a hold of it, if it's a pain in the butt, you can skip it. But it's a tremendous advantage, in my opinion. So you've got your cardboard, you've opened up your boxes, you've taken off the tape, you've ripped out the staples, you're not using anything that's like super glossy, and otherwise, like I steer clear of the boxes that have like excessive amounts of tape. Like there's some places where they just like take the tape and just go over it. Just I don't bother with those. It's not worth my time. So clean cardboard, y'all, that ink is usually soy based. So chill out. It's not toxic, and the soil knows how to bind up those toxins anyhow if they are present. And I want to say hello, Tim, real quick. We got a good group in here tonight. Thank you guys for hanging out. So we're putting the cardboard down on the ground. Let's say I'm doing this in somebody's regular old lawn. They don't want the lawn anymore, or they don't want all of the lawn, and we're going to convert a portion of it into, let's say we're going to go for like a pollinator garden. So we're going to go with stuff that's, probably not going to get much taller than about 4 feet. Cardboard as overlapped as you can make it. Sometimes I will even take like the tabs when you open everything up and interlock them to get everything to kind of stay put. Put all that together. If it's windy, hit it with the water hose to kind of hold everything down, or throw some bricks or something on it. But you might, depending on how quickly you can get to your next stage, you may need to secure it down. There's also sod staples. You can use those. Not my favorite, but you can use those if you need to. And then we're going to hit it with all the carbon. All the carbon we can get a hold of. I'm not even real particular about what kind of carbon it is. Wood chips are my first go-to because they're a little bit slower to break down, and they really do convert into excellent soil. I like the wood chips because they hold everything down. They will. I think it's got a lot to do with like the variable surface area of the chips, which is good for all these different critters that make up the the web of life in the soil. Second option are leaves. Sometimes, if you are in the like your urban suburban areas, you can get a hold of leaves pretty easily because there's a lot of people who will bag them up for the garbage folks to take away. I think that's crazy. So I drive around in that season and I pick up leaves from the curb all the time. I get permission, but because sometimes these people are paying extra, so no sense in them paying extra if I'm the one picking them up. So I'll holler at people and I'll say, "Hey, can I pick up these leaves for you?" So we will pile on leaves and or wood chips. Go ahead and make it as deep as you. If you have enough material, make it as deep as you can. I mean, it's okay if it is 6 or 8 inches deep. As we are building on top of this soil, what ultimately is going to happen is the original soil underneath, as all these tiny to microscopic critters move through this, the soil beneath that was originally there actually improves as well. The fertility abounds throughout by doing this. Depending upon how long so from the time that you build this bed to the time you're ready to plant it, you got a couple of different options. So if you're just doing this like, wham, we're going to do this in a weekend, and so nothing has really broken down yet, that's okay. That's okay. You can still plant. I've done this before. I will cardboard and wood chip in 1 day or over 2 days time, depending on how big it is. And then the third and fourth days are planting. So I will, I usually take, get a crappy old box knife or an old pocket knife that you don't care to just absolutely destroy. Cut an X. So push your cardboard or push your wood chips aside or your leaves or whatever you got. Cut an X. Dig your hole. I'm a big fan of the planting augers that run on a hammer drill. These are great for bulbs. They're great for plugs. They're great even for like 1 gallon potted perennials, which is how they normally come, at least from the nurseries around here. Buzz that guy in, get your planting hole set, get you a few handfuls of some worm castings, a decent potting, or not a potting soil, but like a decent garden soil mix, bag soil mix, just a little bit of extra organic matter, plant, backfill with a little bit of the original soil and a little bit of, improved soil castings, whatever the case may be, push your wood chips back around again. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It's basically an instant garden. And within that first year or so, there's really no weeding. If you got everything pretty interlocked and pretty tight and a nice thick layer of wood chips down, you're not going to be weeding. It is enough to suppress most weeds and most grasses. I will say Bermuda grass can still be a problem sometimes. I'm not really going to go in depth on addressing Bermuda grass right now because there's a lot to it. It spreads by rhizomes that can go incredibly deep. They can go at least a foot deep. So it's really hard to deal with that. One thing I have done to help keep Bermuda grass from infiltrating a planted bed like that is to plant comfrey cuttings very close, like a foot apart, root cuttings all the way around. And because Bermuda grass wants sun, it's genetically inclined to like the heat and the dry. So that dense stand, or whatever you want to call it, plantings of the comfrey will help. I'm not going to say eliminate. I'm not going to make any guarantees here because it's Bermuda grass. But it will certainly help slow down any infiltration and give you the ability to get in there and pull out anything that starts to come in. What is nice is that if that Bermuda grass rhizome kind of like jumps over and it's just still in that wood chip state, it doesn't really have anything to attach to really set root in. So it's fairly easy to pull it out. So that helps. So that's kind of like the 101 ABCD instant garden using wood chips. Over time, depending on how you planted things. So if you planted things really densely, then you're probably not really needing to add more wood chips at any point unless you're just maintaining paths. And that's okay. If you've designed something that's pretty big where you've put in some paths, then it makes sense to go in there about once a year and add some more wood chips for paths. You can also, as you have kind of so much cover, ultimately as those wood chips break down, you can set up plants like creeping thyme or like a low growing clover or something like that. And those will be your ground cover in lieu of grass. And plus, clover is going to be a nitrogen fixer. So that's going to be beneficial anyhow. And then as your other plants fill out, we've kind of got like this symbiotic relationship going on. And then we're not really worrying about the ground so much or the soil as much as we're just kind of maintaining the plants, and we're collecting seed here, or maybe we're cutting things back a little bit here, and maybe we're getting more of this particular plant than we want. So we're kind of pulling a little bit out, or, we're deadheading things or whatever. But, ideally we're not weeding. And all that to say, if somebody comes to me and they say, I want a no maintenance garden, I have to be honest with them and say, then you are either going to hire somebody to maintenance it, or you don't really want an in-ground garden. Maybe you need to stick with pots, or maybe you don't need to garden at all, because there's really no such thing as no maintenance. Now we can drop it down and we can make things a little bit simpler, but y'all, we're dealing with a living system. Something's always, there's always a chance something's going to, come in from somewhere else. Some seed's going to drop from somewhere else. Just things happen. If you don't want to play in the garden, don't have a garden. Or if you want the garden but don't want to play in it, hire somebody to take care of it for you. So that's kind of a distinction worth making for some folks. I'm going to pause a second here and catch up on what looks to be some really good info from Puckerty's Garden. And they say, we get a lot of cardboard, and if I can't use it as a barrier, I put it through a heavy-duty cross-cut paper shredder and mix it in the compost. Might even use it as coop bedding, but it is a bit tedious. And then for leaves, talk to landscapers and offer them a place to dump it by the trailer load. And have I ever heard of a tidy-whitey contest? No, I haven't, but we're getting ready to find out. This is a contest between gardeners or composters. On a given date, bury a cotton garment, tidy-whities to make it funny, and after a month or two, remove it and see whose has degraded the most. Equals, this means indicates who has the most bioactive soil. Okay, so you build your composter, you put your drawers in it, and on a designated time, everybody pulls their drawers out to see how fast they've broken down. Interesting. I've never heard of that, but I like it. It sounds like fun. So the reasoning behind all of this carbon being added to the soil, this kind of jump starts the whole web of life. Like, soil is not this inert medium. That's what big ag treats it to be. That's what conventional agriculture treats it. They just throw chemical fertilizers on it and call it good. But there's actually way more evidence at this point that it's not even about NPK. It's about the balance of fungal systems and bacterial systems and the actual creatures that instigate that whole process. It's just not about, outside's not a lab. It's just not how it works. And nature is always trying to fix things and always trying to strive for balance. And us folks, especially folks who are into the realm of permaculture or, organic and regenerative management, we're trying to observe what nature's trying to do and see what we can do to help it with our brain power, with the the skill sets we have, with our ability to obtain things. So, Hippocrates, this is why anytime I wind up in a group of master gardeners, I keep my mouth shut because they just want to argue. I haven't met one yet who hasn't wanted to pick a fight with me over this. I had one that maybe picking a fight's a little bit too strong, but I was at an event in June, and this guy just was appalled because I was basically explaining what I just explained to y'all. And this guy was just appalled by the concept. It was like I insulted his mama or something. I couldn't figure out why. And finally I was like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But this is what I do on my property. And let me tell you guys, like, I will give you guys, this is beyond anecdotal because I've seen it for myself. I know this lady. I mean, she's kind of a customer, but she's a friend too. Very, very kind lady, but she's got an incredibly serious and debilitating disability that affects her ability to do much of anything. And when she is able to get out, she has to move around with some kind of assistance, like, you know, a cane or something like that. But she didn't want to give up gardening. But she couldn't do the old school row gardening out there with a hoe or a cultivator rake or whatever the case may be. And she had heard about like the back to Eden method. She'd heard about the wood chip gardening, and she had property that was great for wood chips to be dropped, got that set up, found a neighbor with a bucket loader, and he started just dumping wood chips where she wanted them. Basically just, you know, as close to her house as possible. And had neighbors or hired me at times to come out and, you know, kind of rake them and just sort of set up these beds. We didn't even do the cardboard, just the wood chips, because she had so much. She had dozens and dozens and dozens of yards of wood chips coming in. So we could make them as thick as we wanted. And after 1 year, you dig down a couple of inches and you are looking at the most beautiful soil in the world. And so when she plants, she takes her cane and just kind of like makes a little divot because it's so soft. She just makes a little divot, drops her seed in, and then uses the tip of her cane to knock some material back over it. And it's just amazing. I mean, she's been posting her harvest pictures, and it's just amazing. And she doesn't, like, because there are literally days where she can't get out of bed at all, or when she does, it's very late in the day and she can only be up for a very short amount of time. So she has to really make it count. So it can be done and it works. So, you know, for people who want to get all butthurt over their paradigm being upended, oh well. That's, I mean, it's a weird thing to get defensive over, but I've run into it a couple of times, so it's just kind of befuddling to me. Hey, Margot, good to have you. Glad you got to stop in. Socrates says, I'm in the program this year, and they put me in charge of the one vegetable garden. It's been interesting. The YouTube is Garden Jonesboro. If you guys want to look that up, I'll be sure to pull that up and subscribe. Lots of cardboard and maybe 10 large loads of fresh chips. Yeah, you guys are going to be rocking and rolling. And that's what it's going to take. It takes proving people. So that's why we've got our place set up, and I've got enough infrastructure in place now, being in our, you know, 4th full year of being here, to so that I can invite people up here for our open houses, or anytime I have a new consulting client, I have an open door policy to make an appointment with me and come up here, and you can see how I've got these gardens. And I feel like it's important to be able to represent that. So it really is that simple. Now, yeah, sometimes, you know, we run into issues with, like, for instance, one of my, I met with some folks back, let's see, I think it would have been Monday. I was out there on Monday, and they just bought a very beautiful rural property after I actually helped them with some stuff at their previous home, which was in a subdivision, and they wanted more land, more space to be able to stretch out a little bit. So they had me back out for a property consult, and they're not going to get somebody to bring them wood chips. Not with, I mean, very nice driveway, but they had to, you know, like, literally wind it up the mountain. Nobody's going to come up there. No company is going to want to do that. Maybe they can get a drop at the bottom of the driveway, and then they just have to load it into the truck and get it up top. So sometimes getting a hold of this stuff, you got to get creative, but there's lots of ways. And that's why I like the leaves. And I've done this too. I've got an entire section of my food forest where I just did leaves because I had so many bag leaves. I just put them down. So I kind of get to look at, like, this area with leaves, this area with wood chips only. And then I've got areas where the two have been blended together. Sometimes the leaves are just easier to get a hold of. and they'll get you there just the same. It's just maybe you got to go a little heavier, a little deeper, but all the carbon all the time is good. It does not starve for. There's people out there that insist that it starves nitrogen. It doesn't. I can't see where they're getting the information. I think perhaps if they were tilling pretty deep and then burying fresh wood chips. So wood chips, they're still green, they're still hot, they're still high in nitrogen because that tree was just alive. Maybe that could be a problem, but I don't know why you go through all that trouble to begin with. It doesn't make any sense. Just lay them on the ground. Just throw them on the ground. Just think about what the forest tries to do. Emulate it. It really is that simple. Margot has a good tip here for folks that maybe were bending over is rough. Take a 1/2 inch piece of PVC as a garden cane, poke a hole in it, drop the seed down the PVC. That works. That works. And come to think of it, I think my friend might have been doing that too. I think I remember her telling me that. So yeah, all kinds of workarounds, all kinds of options. So the takeaway, just build on top of the soil. Don't worry about removing the sod. You don't need to till. You don't need to rip anything up. The only time I till around here is when I'm making when I do it to make a swale. Because I make micro swales for everything that I do up here on the farm, for the growing systems. And it's just pretty easy to take my little tiller and just, mark contour, go along, rake that soil into the berm that's pulled up, and then I go back and I wood chip that berm, and I throw wood chips into, depending on how the swale is oriented. Sometimes I will also fill the swale with wood chips. And yeah, Hippocrates put it wisely here. Carbon incorporated ties up nitrogen, but not on top as a mulch. So if you are burying it, that can be a problem. But probably not for very long. Like I probably wouldn't plant in it right away. Like it'll get there eventually. It'll get to where it's more balanced. But yeah, just throw that stuff on top of like you said, it's only temporary. So I gotta wonder sometimes. I mean, I don't want to be a big time conspiracy person here, although I am. But it kind of seems like anytime a lot of people begin to discover a smart, inexpensive, readily accessible way of making themselves more independent in one form or another, somebody comes along and poo-poos it. And maybe they don't mean to. Maybe they're misinformed. But I'm just here to say, question this stuff. And on the same side, be willing to be humble about it and reassess some things. There's some systems that I have tried that haven't worked real well. Back in my experimental days, mostly at the city homestead, mostly related to keeping, the way I was treating water. I had excess water, and I thought certain things would work better than they would. I tried to tie up water in a backyard pond, and it worked sometimes, but not always. And so, be willing to reassess things. But I just kind of wonder about people that want to try to talk folks out of things that just obviously work. It's kind of, I've kind of come down on this before. It's this whole the culture, or maybe even the cult of progress, where people insist that the only way to make things better is to make them more complex, more expensive, more government, that sort of thing. We need more people to tell us what to do in order to make things better for everybody. And I just don't think it works that way. I think it needs to be simpler and smaller and less involved and more rooted in maybe those 12 principles that are such wonderful guidance. You pair up those 12 principles of permaculture, and maybe we throw in the why am I having a brain fart? The 10 Commandments, and that wouldn't be half bad, would it? So And Hippocrates says sometimes it's confusing large scale agriculture with much smaller scale. Yes. And a lot of people are like, well, how do I do this on when I'm talking about the whole wood chip thing, like, well, how do I do this on 40 acres? Well, you don't. You don't. You find ways to produce as much as you need through less mechanized means. And we do that by, interplanting and cover cropping and basically you got to shift your whole mindset. You can't take the technique and try to apply the technique with the conventional mindset. Those two things don't work together. And Jeremy says most people are afraid of trying new things. When people ask me about organic methods, I ask them to try it out in a side yard or smaller area to give things a try. Start small and build outwards. Yeah, one of the principles. Slow, small solutions. I have to remind myself of this all the time because I can be remarkably impatient. And anytime that I start to get into a hurry with anything that I'm doing, whether it doesn't really matter what it is, gardening related or not, I almost always have something that slows me down and reminds me that the slow and the small solutions, that's what's gotten me to where I'm at today. That's what's helped me build the business. That's what's helped me just have a life that I enjoy living and being largely in charge of myself and nobody really being in charge of me. So yeah, you can't blend conventional thinking with these regenerative techniques. They're two totally separate beasts. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are out there doing the good work as well, relaying this to other people. There is still, I think about the waste stream of like the wood chips, for instance. In our area, it kind of depends. There have been wood chips went from being a waste product to a commodity in a lot of places, but that's okay. But the whole the chip drop thing is really taken off, where people partner with that service to drop stuff off for people. Because last I heard, so if a company, so let's say a tree company with one of their big trucks, I'm not sure how many yards. I think those hold about 40 yards, maybe it's 20. Anyway, it's a lot. They hold a lot of wood chips. In our area in Knoxville, it's $300 for them to dump it at one of the green waste places that recycle those materials and sell them back as mulch. It's not even just going in a landfill. Like, they are reselling and they are charging these companies $300 per load. So yeah, they're pretty happy to maybe drive a few minutes out of their way to offload that off the side of your driveway instead of basically paying probably the day's wages for one of those men on that crew. So sometimes it's just hard. It can be hard to make the connections. So I always tell people, try to find out who is doing your who is servicing the around the power line. So whoever has the contract with the utility service, and just start calling companies. And if you're out and you see them working and they're close to your house and you have a drop site that's easy for them, no overhead obstructions, no weird backing, things like that to make it as smooth for them as possible, go get those guys a pack of cold Gatorade and swing by and figure out who the crew foreman is and say, hey, if you guys would be willing to consider dropping these off in my yard, I'd be appreciative. And maybe you could even say, hey, I'll stash an envelope with $60 in it for you, whatever. Gift cards. It's you do have to make a little bit of effort, but a lot of times once these guys know you're the spot, it's pretty handy. We've got a couple of guys here. We've got a couple of tree guys and a couple of leaf drops that come to our farm. And it's just been because me and my brother know people, and we get out and we ask and we trade and we send them business and they send us business, and we just try to help out the entire process. Talk about getting in a hurry. You get in a hurry, you end up with 9 stitches in a finger. Exactly. Never get in a hurry with a tool, especially one that's sharp. That's why I never work on trees. I never work on firewood if I'm stressed out or tired. And I pretty much have I have a 1 gas tank. That's when I'm done. So I will fill the gas tank on that saw. When that gas tank is empty, I am done for the day. Doesn't matter. Done. And Good to have you, Jack Beanstalk. Folks that are pushing products for profit, usually the ones that don't want to listen or try common sense ways to garden. Yeah, there's just some people who they just believe that it has to be more complicated. There's just people, I don't really know where that mindset comes from, but it's pretty prevalent in our culture. And you can always have a bottle of your favorite medicinal grain-based beverage. Sure. Especially getting towards the end of the workday. You bring them something that's been on ice. I bet they'll appreciate it. So yeah, I'm that guy where if I see guys working in the area and I'm able to stop and it looks like we have a chance to talk. I give them my card with the address and my phone number on it, and I just say, when you guys are heading out, just text me, and I will text you like kind of directions because we're a little bit weird to find, and and sometimes they're agreeable, sometimes a lot of times they're like, man, we've got, we're just gonna dump it at the shop. A lot of these guys live on land; they just dump it off in a gully somewhere. But if they're agreeable, you can be good to go. So that's the tree companies. And then a lot of in your urban and suburban areas, you will have the guys who run the leaf vacuum trucks. Same thing, same process. Um, Little upgrade for these guys if you're able to do it. Those vacuum trucks, what a lot of the guys do on the smaller units, this is what my guy does, is they will have a pallet in the front before they start loading leaves, and they have a pallet and they'll have a rope tied to that pallet, and they'll have the rope come out, and it be at the end, the opening of the truck. When they get to where they're dumping, like at the big mulch drop sites, they'll have a big concrete block you tie off to, and they'll just pull away, and it just pulls all the leaves out. Really smart, ingenious, nice. So for the guy who will drop here, I drove a couple of T-posts, big heavy duty T-posts, not little flimsy ones, big ones. A couple of them, like as close as I could get them, as deep as I could get them with the post slammer, so that he can tie off to that, pull away, and then just all those leaves come out. We're good to go. So little upgrades for them, anything to make life a little bit easier, a little simpler. They'll appreciate that, and before you know it, you'll have really productive soil. That's where it's where it all stems from, and we have to kind of, I think we have a little bit of a responsibility to get more of this method into the public consciousness. And that's why when I show these gardens, when I talk about these methods, yes, it's about permaculture, but I try not to go too heavy on that word, because sometimes people don't know what it means. So I just talk about, or it's something that sounds inaccessible to them, or too hippy dippy, or too whatever. I mean, there's too many people who equate permaculture with communism for some ridiculous reason. So I talk about building soil health. I talk about mulching. I talk about sheet mulching, lasagna gardening, all these things, and we're all getting to the same spot, but we're not getting too worried about terminology. Tim says, a wise man once told me, put the seeds in dirt and let the sun work. Yeah, for sure. We don't need to make things so dang hard. And so once you've got your gear, my goodness, brain fart, all your carbon, once you have your carbon, just keep laying it down. So I talked about how I do the garden, like if we're going to do a pollinator garden. Let's say we're going to do like a vegetable garden. So here's how we laid out ours, because we had the first weekend of a permaculture design course out here in 2021, and this was part of the students' project. So we cardboarded the whole garden area that I already had kind of staked out, and we determined where the paths were and where the beds were and the respective widths of each of those. We put cardboard and wood chips and straw in the paths, and then in the beds, what we designated to be the beds, this is one of the times where I did purchase. I had a purchase of, it was 50% compost, 50% topsoil, sifted topsoil, because I hadn't been here long enough to have made my own compost yet. And then we did that where the beds were. We went ahead and planted the beds. This was done in mid-March, I believe. And then since then, about once a year, I add more wood chips to the paths, or straw, whatever I can get a hold of. And remind me, Tim, somebody pop in here, remind me to talk about how to get straw. I can get you free straw too. We do the straw, and then we do now. So since my beds are established, I just add new compost, a couple times a year. Usually do it when I do the first round of planting, and I do it again when I do the fall planting. And then if I'm not going to plant anything over the winter, I throw more leaves on top. So I've gathered my leaves and I throw more leaves on top, and I just keep that soil covered. For the love of all that is good, you guys, cover your stinking soil. Cover your stinking soil, please. Makes a huge difference. Cover it with something. Even if you can't cover it with tidy whities. I don't care. Just don't leave bare soil, especially in your rainy season. It goes away. It runs away. Especially when you garden on a hilltop, on slope like I do. So I'll always cover everything back up again. So getting a hold of pine straw and wheat straw. Most of your, I knew Hippocrates was going to like that one. Subtitle, cover it with your tidy whities. So we are, go to your, forgive me for my brain fart tonight, your landscape supplies places. So around here we have Site One. You can even try this with your Ace Hardware, Home Depot, Lowe's. The bigger box store places may not be as agreeable to this. So again, work your charms, be helpful, or I don't know, get an incredibly part-time job in the garden center. 10 hours a week, closing or whatever, so that you can get a hold of these materials for like the growing season and then quit. I didn't suggest that. Don't tell your boss. But the trailers that this stuff comes in, they have to be cleaned out before those trailers can be swapped out again. The companies that deliver these materials will not take a dirty trailer. So they have to pay a guy, clean them out, or you could do it. Real helpful if you can, because this stuff is going to be loose. It's no longer baled. It's going to be loose. So if you have a trailer you can back up to it, or if you got a buddy with a dump trailer, even better. If you got a brother with a dump trailer like I do, this helps a lot. And periodically, I will just kind of check in with the guys down the road at Site One, because we know, we at this point, like I do enough business with them, like I've got a little bit of a relationship, so it helps. And just say, hey, if you guys have an empty trailer coming up the next couple of weeks, please let me know. We'll come clean it out. Go in there with push broom. You might want to put a dust mask on. Really, really dusty, especially the wheat straw. Push those materials out. You've got your straw. Some places too, like especially at your actual like material yards, they will push all that out and they'll just be all piled in a corner somewhere. So you're probably going to be forking it out, with a garden fork or with a pitchfork or something. That's a little bit hard work, especially if it's been rained on. But that's an option as well. If you're going to do that, if you're going to approach people at a nursery or a materials yard, you need to do this when they're having a slow day, maybe because of the rain, or like after like the lunch rush. So these places will be really busy from about 7 a.m. to about 10 a.m. That's when all the crews come in to get their materials and everything. Then they head out to the job. And then they take their lunch break and then they're back. So you kind of want to look at between about 3 or about, let's say maybe about 1:30 to about 4:30 for these places. And again, find out, who the manager is, ask if you can, clean out a trailer. Some of these places are going to be real wary about liability and things like that, and then some of them just don't care. So just kind of take that into account, see what you can do to add value to their operation, and and Tim says my two Ace hardware stores charge me $1 per 55-gallon garbage full of straw. Yeah, and see, I've got an Ace right down the road too, and because we have Site One just as close, I haven't bothered them as much, but that is an option I kind of retain myself, because they've got the two trailers there, super easy to get to, and yeah, you can just you throw like a plastic bag in a garbage can or something and just load it up in there, because that'd be pretty easy. Just kind of fill a can with a liner bag in it, tie it off, pull it out, put another liner in, repeat. One more option, not as good but better than nothing. Certainly good if you're just building compost and you're short on carbon materials. Find out who in your area is running a sawmill. For rough cut stuff, don't mess with the treated stuff necessarily. Or you got your woodworkers, things like that. Most of those guys in their shops, they'll have like the big vacuum infiltration system, and all those shavings go into a nice big like 55-gallon kind of drum type deal. And we've got a neighbor down the road, same thing. This kind of just fell in my lap and I jumped on it. Every few months he's got 5 or 6 big old bags of sawdust that need to go away, and that's what we use for the composting toilet outside. And that's just one of my lighter carbon sources for making compost. I use it in bedding for the chicken coop, things like that. So plenty of options out there. You just got to get kind of creative and kind of think about it. And it's sort of, once you kind of get one pin down, you get a little better at it. It's like anything else. You get a little better at it, a little more confident about how to go about it. And, just be willing. You might get told no from time to time. It's not a real big deal. But you got to ask. You got to try. So I want to check my notes here, because I feel like there might have been one more thing I wanted to relay about that whole system. Oh, the worms, the earthworms. Yes. So when you put this cardboard down first, and then you throw some carbon on top, 9 times out of 10, you go back a couple weeks later and just lift up that cardboard, you're going to see worms just right there, just hanging out. You're going to see the grass going yellow and starting to die from being, suppressed and starved of light. And you see those worms showing up, start digesting that matter, breaking it down, aerating things. So it's just, it just works, y'all. It just works. I don't care what anybody says. Go for it. It's super accessible. Even if you're doing raised beds, so you get you like the Vivo or one of the Vigo or all those different Vivian brand. I don't know. They all start with V, but they're all metal raised beds and they're all good quality. Fill the bottom third or even half with wood chips. If they're real deep ones, if they're the really tall ones, throw a bunch of dead branches down in there first. Pack them in real tight, then throw wood chips. And then you only need to do soil or compost for the last few inches. So you're spending way less money on soil if you don't have a lot of your own compost built up at that point. And of course, over time, everything will kind of break down and collapse, and you'll need to be topping it off. But theoretically, by then, you've been making your own compost, and you can just throw it in there. So it's kind of like the easiest and most sensible thing in the world to me. And some of these evenings, while we've been so hot during the day, the evenings have been cooler. So I have been just kind of expanding, especially the upper garden and the food forest coverage. So there's a section of the food forest that got planted before I had all the materials. Mostly, cardboard's almost always like the hang up. But as I obtain more cardboard, because I got the hookup recently, I just keep applying those sheets and just, Sometimes I'm good to make 20 trips with the wheelbarrow, and sometimes I make 5 because it just depends on how hot it is, how tired I am. But it's just little bits of progress, and I'm sure like by the time fall gets here, the rest of the food forest will be covered, and that area is probably a 1/5 acre. It's about the size of my original urban lot without a house on it, so it's pretty big. It's a lot of stuff. I started counting everything that I had in it the other day, and I have about 30 species right now. So, and room to add more and adjust a few things. Tim wants to know, do you ever use a sod cutter to clear an area before planting? I met a guy out of Florida who does that due to St. Augustine grass. I haven't, but I actually am considering it for a project I have coming up. Because we're going to have to play the Bermuda grass game with this particular project. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think I'm going to have to rent a sod cutter and roll that sod out and then start building. The thing is, I don't know if I can go deep enough to get all the rhizomes. So I don't want to rent a machine where it's not really going to help me achieve the objective. Another project, so that's to kind of address a planted area that needs to just be kind of reworked, like just certain things took over that the lady doesn't want. We need to bring some other plant matter in, but we really need to kind of address the rhizome issue. I've got another customer who is interested in replacing sections of lawn that are between her terraced raised beds with clover instead of the fescue sod. And that's going to take a sod cutter. But it's a lot of slope. And I've not really messed with a sod cutter too much. So it's one of those things where I'll rent one, use it here on the farm, see what I think, and then go from there. So it probably has its place. And interestingly, I shared a photo a while back while we're talking about sod, I've shared a photo a while back in the Telegram group where my brother had some leftover sod from a job, and he asked me if I needed it, and I was like, well, I don't really know where I would put sod right now. And so he just took it down to where we dump unwanted materials and brush. And after looking at these rolled up pieces of sod for a few days, I was like, that'd make a heck of a berm still rolled up, because they're that thick. Sod is mostly root and dirt, and I call it dirt, not soil, because of the way the stuff is created. So I grabbed them all and kept them rolled up, and I built a berm on the downhill side of where our little stock tank pool sits, because we basically needed more. There was a bit of a drop off, more than I wanted, and I was like, well, it's free, it's sitting there. So I built that and then covered it up with, you got it, wood chips. And eventually I'll plant that. So I just kept them rolled up, and it worked really well. I mean, this has been weeks now, and it's still holding up really well. I'm going to see how it holds up over the wintertime with the rain. But yeah, that's a good. So if I that's to say, let's close the loop, right? So if I'm going to remove sod for a job, I don't want to pay to dump it. That's crazy. I don't want to just waste. I don't want to just throw it, because this is like legitimate, like good fescue lawn. And I'm gonna be doing this in the fall, so hopefully it's still gonna. I wouldn't do this in the summertime. This would not work. So this is gonna be a fall job, seeding and everything, clover in the fall. That's something to think about. Like, what, you could also roll those back out, flip them upside down, soil side up, and build on top of that, and build like raised mounds. So, just, it's another option. Let's see here. Hippocrates Garden says that vegetable garden I do for the MGs on Riceland, by the way. Okay, interesting. Have a ton of nut sedge. And they are learning, while mulch may not kill it, cardboard mulch may not kill it, it makes the manual much easier as the soil is so loose. Exactly. So that's a really good point. That's a really good point. I didn't mean to butcher reading that out loud. But basically what he is saying is, so when you have something like nut sedge, which has like a really robust rhizome, and when people have this, people who are obsessed about having a monocrop lawn, they see nut sedge, they get real PO'd. But by layering on top, you have really loosened the soil. Like it's like being mega aerated by doing that. It makes it so much easier to dig and work with. So you can use that method to de-weed things over time. That is actually an option. It's You're playing a little bit of a long game, but it'll work. And Tim says if you ever have to have cardboard for a job or something, Uline has rolls of it for decent pricing. That's good to know because I was looking at this for a job where I might just want to order it and just have it. So yeah, Uline is good. Granger, there's one called American Paper Products or something like that. But yeah, there's actually, you can get them for, you know, 50 cents for a 4x4 square. So believe me, I have thought about that, and thank you for letting us know. We've got a Uline catalog because they just sent me one day. It's like, oh look, somebody sold my business information. Thanks for that. And we got a Uline catalog. But Angel loves stuff like that. She loves office supplies and things of that nature. So that's like her happy place is to flip to the Uline catalog. And then one day she was like, babe, they've got cardboard. I was like, hot dog. So yeah. If you're bidding out a pretty big job and you count in the time it takes you to go around searching for cardboard, and then you count your time to rip the tape off, take the staples out, break all the boxes down, stack it all up, store it somewhere, try to keep it from blowing away, and you're an installer and this is your job. Personally, I'm okay. I'm okay with ordering cardboard. I would probably never order and pay for cardboard for a project here on the farm, but if I'm doing it for a customer, yeah, guys, that's going to get rolled into the bid. And it's not crazy. It's not crazy. And it really helps you achieve your objective. And don't forget too, butcher paper, you can get rolls of butcher paper. That's super easy. Super easy butcher paper. You just have to be able to like weigh it down in a hurry. And newspaper. I have been known to dumpster dive down at the inconvenience center because we still have enough boomers who get newspapers around here. And yeah, I did a garden for my lady just down the road, largely from newspaper because she'd been saving it. She had it stacked up in paper sacks, and she was like, hey, go turn this into the soil. I was like, rock and roll, let's do it. Hippocrates said, I have cut sod with a shovel, and instead of removing, I flipped it upside down. Most of it died and composted. Yeah, that's basically how we did. So you can do this with a broad fork too. That's how we did the upper and lower swales of the kitchen garden, was to work the broad fork. And I don't know if we can really call it sod around here, but it was, whatever came up and had roots attached to it. Worked it up, kind of took a separate little sod cutter tool, hand tool around the edges to kind of just knock stuff loose because there's so much rock. Flipped it, and we kept doing that until we had a channel and we had a berm, and it worked. It worked really, really well. So, yeah, guys, that's kind of 1 hour of building your soil up and changing the world and making your life easier by doing that. It's the way to go. So, do I have anything else? I think two other things before we go away. We didn't really talk about how doing your soil this way is good for the water factor. So you are capturing more water. You're holding it in the soil. You're holding it in the soil longer. You are in the heat. You are keeping the few inches of soil. You're keeping it basically cooler, so you're not losing as much to evaporation. Your plants are not struggling to retain water as much. I will, when we have a really good rain, and then when we've been dry again for a few days, I will go dig around in certain places where the wood chips are, kind of like freshly added, to see how damp the ground is. And the answer is it normally is. It normally is some level of dampness underneath all that. So that's the other factor, is your watering needs go down. So this kind of gardening makes a lot of sense where you are very hot and very dry, if you can obtain the materials, for sure. So bingo. sponge, sponge, sponge. Think about it. Build a sponge, make a sponge. And that's why I like to use this mix of material. That's why I like to mix up the leaves with the wood chips. Like that's something my brother will do. So we'll get separate piles of leaves and wood chips from the guys who come and drop them off, and they'll start to break down for a while. And then eventually Tyler will consolidate all of that with the Bobcat, get in there with the forks and just like flip it and rotate it and flip it and rotate it. And it's essentially a mulchy compost. It's not really mulch. It's not really compost either, but it kind of splits the difference and serves the purpose of building that soil, keeping the water there. And rolls of craft paper, heavy duty construction paper. Some people call that butcher paper. Make sure it's not the waxy stuff, just straight up butcher paper. Yeah, and it's really not expensive. And a lot of the times you can get that, like, you know, places, Sam's Club, talk to guys who do, who like to do, they run smokers. A lot of times they like to wrap their meat up in butcher paper. Ask where they get theirs, where they get a good price for theirs. Well worth it. All kinds of options out there. So, Socrates says, one of my goals is to have so much organic material in my soil that the University Soil Lab, which is geared at industrial ag, won't accept it. Yeah. And that's a good point. So that's really what we're getting to. That's what we're heading towards. We want more organic matter. That's where the life resides. That's how nutrients and minerals make it into the food and or the animals that are going to be meat. And, you know, you hear stories from Joel Salatin talking about how many inches of organic matter they have added to their pastures over time by using these in their case, you know, proper rotational grazing and adding compost and adding and cover cropping and things of that nature. And I'm not going to remember the exact number, but something like 2 inches of additional organic matter per acre equals, I think it's tens of thousands of gallons of water retention. It's just so much more water going into the soil, into the water table, into the aquifers, not shunting off, taking soil with it, taking nutrient with it, and going down the road, down the creek, silt into the waterway, ultimately here in the southeast, winding up in the Mississippi River. So water in the soil needs to be in the soil. We all talk about storing water. Great. Water tanks, good. Rain barrels, good. More water in soil. And that will lead us on a whole other road we'll go down on another day. And Hippocrates, I knew you would be ready with the specifics. 1% of organic matter equals 25,000 gallons of water per acre, more or less, which is the size of an Olympic swimming pool. So that's a lot. That's a lot. I've got my work cut out ahead of me here and getting to that point. We're just a couple of years in, but that is one of my biggest goals out here is to keep building the soil. We're doing that by rotating the sheep. I am adding compost in areas that really need it. You know, we are getting to the point where I'm considering, you know, cover cropping behind certain things, leaving as much biomass on the soil as possible, things like that. Not mowing if we don't need to mow. We let things get pretty tall here before we worry about mowing. More roots, deeper roots, healthier soil. Whole thing is all interlocked together, and it's really beautiful when you think about it. It just really, I don't ever get tired of marveling at the brilliance of creation of these systems. A little while ago today, my sister Erica and her friend were up here. Erica lives in Las Vegas and her friend lives in Nashville, and they get together once a year for like a girls camp out thing. And so they stopped here to visit before they went to their cabin. And her friend was just loves what we're doing. Like, she just thinks it's the coolest thing. But she was like, you know, why do you do it? What made you want to do it? And I didn't really have an answer, because I just said it's the only thing I've ever been interested in doing. Everything else I've ever done to make a living, I was thinking about doing this and trying to figure out how I could do this. I think it's the greatest and most honorable work out there, is to take care of the land. You take care of it, it'll take care of you. That's just kind of kind of how I viewed it. So, y'all, I think I'm gonna wrap this one up and go see what Angel's making for dinner because I'm hungry and try to cool off some more. So, really appreciate y'all hanging out. I had a good time tonight. Thank you for the contributions, and let's do it again next week. So, thank you for this. Share it around. Do all the stuff to try to get some more eyeballs on this. I am picking up a little more momentum. It's always good to hear from people who are watching this after the fact and they're asking questions and emailing me. That makes me super happy. I know I'm reaching folks. So I'm gonna get on out of here, and y'all have a good night. Thank you so much.